Today I'd like to talk about something that perplexes people when they watch videos from UFO communicators and summoners. To me, this is where the rubber meets the road. I used to think that these were balloons, but I found out that I was wrong. I was using my inductive reasoning and inference to conclude a false negative or type 2 error. False assumptions lead to a blind reality. I did what I typically do. I passed judgment without really looking into the details. And when we miss the details, we close our minds to the open possibilities. When we impulsively judge, we can make mistakes that can lead to false conclusions. I believe that the beginning of understanding is realization. Hello, my name is Hans Boysen, and I've been working with some of the best UFO communicators and summoners in the country. Although I cannot speak for them, I wanted to give you my take on why some of these things they captured are either mechanical or biological. But before I begin, I would like to show you a couple of pictures and go over a couple of words that are pertinent to the subject. So the first couple of pictures are ducks. Here's one duck swimming in a pond, another duck swimming in a pond, a group of ducks swimming in a pond, a couple of deer in the forest, a tree in the forest, and a couple of rocks. The other one is, set next to a pool. One of the key terms I'd like to introduce is this thing called inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is the process of making general conclusions from specific instances. Another great definition of inductive reasoning is the process of recognizing or observing patterns and drawing a conclusion. Inductive reasoning is something we do as a survival technique as well as saving time. A good example of this is this thing called the duck test. The duck test is a classic example of inductive reasoning. If it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, colored like a duck, it's probably a duck. Another great term I'd like to introduce you to is this thing called inference, a conclusion reached on the basis of evidence and reasoning. Another great explanation of this term is that inference is the act or process of deriving logical conclusions from premises known or assumed to be true. We live our lives by induction and inference because today is pretty much the same as yesterday, and the things that we recognize and deal with today is pretty much similar to what we've dealt with in the past. This is a great way to go about living our lives, except for when it fails. This is when inductive reasoning and inference lead us to be overly infatuated with our ability to recognize unusual things. Intuitive reasoning is the way our thoughts, quote, fill in the blanks in order to explain missing parts of a storyline. It doesn't use rational processes such as facts and data to come up with a conclusion. What we don't know and what we don't understand is simply absorbed or filled in. A graphical representation of this are these pictures. Can you see the missing triangle? And can you see the missing square? Getting back to the duck test, there are certain criteria, certain characteristics that we assume are present when viewing a common object. Usually, we won't give anything more than just an initial glance, but what if we notice something abnormal, something uncharacteristic about the object? At second glance, you'll notice that this duck does not have any feathers. The tail section has a couple of machined holes drilled into it. The colors are kind of faded. If you're over at the lake, you'll notice that the neck is not moving and it's just kind of bobbing around in the water. It's obviously a decoy. When someone sees a duck decoy and calls it a real duck, they are committing a type 2 error. So let's go over the type 1 and type 2 errors. A type 1 error is detecting an effect that is not present, which is kind of overreacting, whereas the type 2 error is failing to detect an effect that is present, which is underreacting. The best analogy I've heard for the type 1 and type 2 errors is the deer in the woods analogy. In a type 1 error, if a deer hears rustling in a bush, it assumes it is a predator and takes off, whereas it was probably the wind. The type 2 error is the dangerous one. Type 2 error happens when the deer hears rustling in a bush and assumes it is the wind, but it is possibly a predator. This deer could be lunch. When you see a video put out by a UFO communicator or summoner, you cannot assume it is a balloon, even though you see a tether. You must take a second look and scrutinize. There is no doubt that sometimes these guys can be wrong, but the reason why they post these objects is because they show uncharacteristic features of a typical balloon. So let's get back to the duck test. Every once in a while, after UFO communication or summoning, we see something in the sky that either looks out of the ordinary or does something out of the ordinary. We call this indications of imitation. Indications of imitation are subtle, abnormal details that reveal atypical and uncharacteristic features of an object or event. Hopefully by now you've realized your type 2 error in thinking that this was a real duck. Soon you will be asked to take your savvy one step farther. Although balloons come in many sizes and shapes, it's not brain surgery to distinguish them from other flying debris. We've all grown up with balloons, and we all know that balloons have certain characteristics. There's type, foil or latex, color, theme, size, kinesiology, which is the study of movement, tether, direction, the way it travels, and most of the time we can find commercially sold balloons on the internet or in stores. Many UFO communicators and summoners believe anything we send up in our skies can be duplicated and made functional. Even these mimics will display indications of imitation. You should probably take a second look at anything that was called by a UFO communicator or summoner. Here is an example. The tether is an inexpensive packaging ribbon. The professionals call it polyethylene string. Its width is about 3/16 of an inch thick, which is less than 1/4 of an inch, and paper thin. It has a very high tensile strength. It would be impossible for a balloon to break this. This is a typical round foil balloon. It's about 13 inches wide or about 13 inches in diameter. Since tethers are about 3/16 of an inch wide, you should be able to stack over 70 tethers side by side to equal the width of a round foil balloon. Over 70 side by side. Also, I found out through experimentation, if a round foil balloon had multiple tethers on it, the tethers would flare toward the end, not come together like a dog's tail. But we'd have to think, why would anybody put multiple tethers on a balloon? Maybe because of some sort of special aesthetic effect that someone wanted to portray at some party, which happened to escape or be set free at the particular moment when you happen to be looking up into the sky. Is this possible? Yes. Is it probable? No. The thing with possibility is that anything is possible. Is it possible for you to win the lottery? Yes. But it's not probable. Is it possible for a lion to break into your room tonight and maul you to death? Yes. Is it probable? No. Here's an object I captured on May 28, 2014 in Sylmar, California on my side yard. I captured this one with my Panasonic high-def V520. I called this one Sprout because it looked like a sprouting plant to me. A few indications of imitation stood out to me. Number one, this one didn't look like a latex or a foil balloon to me. Number two, the tether was coming out of its backside rather than the bottom. Typically, the tether will dictate which is the top. Of course, the tether will be at the bottom because of its weight. Number three, the tether was very thick, too thick. Something about this was not right. I'm hoping you can see these things also. And number four, I think people are going to say that this object has multiple tethers, but as we discussed previously, multiple tethers flare at the end and don't come together like a dog's tail. So let's go over this. Does this look like a typical latex or foil balloon? Is this normal that the tether comes out the backside of this object? Can you put 70 tethers side by side to make up the width of this object? The answer is no. So the question is, what are they? According to the summoners and UFO communicators, they are either biological or mechanical. But could we be seeing a combination of both? Are we watching millions of years of advanced technology using nanotechnology to observe the growth of our planet? Or are we watching millions of years of biological evolution mimicking creatures found here on Earth? One thing for sure is that these things are not normal. When we ignore indications of imitation, we make type 2 errors. We negate the fact that the duck test and inductive reasoning can steer us in the wrong direction. When we take the time to examine these objects, we can find the uncharacteristic features. Why do they look like balloons? Well, if they're mechanical, they're probably millions of years in our advance. Aliens are not bound by our technological constraints. The universe is 3 times older than Earth, which makes us the new kids on the block. Maybe they're watching us. Maybe they're reading our minds in order to study us. If they are biological, they are inhabiting one of the largest environments that the Earth has to offer. If they are biological, they are utilizing the same survival techniques other creatures here on Earth are utilizing. They are using camouflage and mimicking in order to survive, but I'll talk about this in my next video. Thank you for watching. Please join LA UFO channel on meetup.com for our next UFO encounter meetup. The UFO communicators are wonderful and the people who attend are fantastic, so you'll have fun. I'll see you next time.